A bit of that superhero origin story with our audience today. How you get into acting, and then you got into music, and then transitioned into voice acting.
Thank you. Yes. Well, the only other thing I wanted to be when I was a kid was a hockey player for the Detroit Red Wings, who have not made the playoffs in the last few years. But I'm talking to a Stanley Cup winning city, so I know what that's about. God bless you guys. You're moving on to the second round, huh? Well done. How about that guy Pat Maroon? Who was with you guys a couple of years ago? He goes to Tampa, he's back 3 cups in a row. Jesus. I wanted to be a hockey player. I found out, fortunately, that by the time I was 18, I was neither good enough, I was neither good enough, mean enough, nor did I have enough dental insurance to make a nickel as a hockey player. But my fallback gig was performance, was acting, much to my parents' chagrin. But I was a singer first, who then started doing theater, traveling around the country doing itinerant theater. How do you say itinerant? Yeah, good. Is that right? Traveling. That's so cool. Oh my God. I thought I caught her. And I loved it. But when I moved to LA, it was ostensibly to do live action. I wanted to go as a singer who became an actor, and so I wanted to do TV, commercials, movies, and I was doing that. I was doing a lot of commercials on camera, episodic television, MacGyver, St. Elsewhere, Love American Style, and Amazing Stories, and whatever. But then, there's this wonderful axiom that goes, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. Well, I've been doing character voices for years because they made my soul happy. I mean, I didn't have any designs on being the next Mel Blanc. I like to play. And more often I would sing in character for the fun of it. So I'd sing, I'd sing Pinky doing the immigrant song. And thought that was kind of fun. It's getting late, have you seen my mates? Might tell me when the boys get here. It's Saturday night and I wanna rock, wanna get a belly full of beer. People just love hearing Yakko sing Elton John songs. So I just did it because it was fun. But in the middle 80s, my agent called and said, have you ever thought about doing animation? I said, sure, I just want to work. It didn't occur to me, I want to work, I don't care. She said, well, there's a show called Transformers and G.I. Joe being done from Hasbro and Marvel, and they're auditioning people, and I went and I got a job on, I think my first one was G.I. Joe, and I walked in the room of the recording studio, and there were actors there whom I'd recognized from episodic television. But the coolest thing was that none of them were limited by the way they looked. And for most of us who are not celebrity talent, and it's not false modesty, I'm flattered that people treat me like a big shot. But man, I don't draw them and I don't write them. It's a very collaborative effort. But in this circumstance, to be an average-looking Caucasian kid from Michigan who was typed, looking for an average-looking white kid to be in Hill Street Blues. So I'd go in and read with 50 other kids who could have been my cousins. But to be in a position where I was limited only by my talent it took me about 2 seconds to go, man, this is the gig. Nobody cares what I look like. And I know these actors. I'm working with some really wonderful actors. So I called my agent and I said, man, send me out for as much of this as possible. So I started booking more and more animation. And I think it took me about 7 years to just sort of get rid of the on-camera part because I was working too much. And I luckily have the sort of ego that does not require that people recognize me. It's incredibly flattering when it does. And in my case, the only thing that happens when people recognize me is joy. I'm in the happy business. And I promise you, the person who gets the most out of the joy is yours truly. It is never not fabulous when somebody recognizes me because they want to hear Yakko, or Pinky, or Carl saying, don't forget to finish your croissant, or Raphael, or Donatello, or whatever. And so it's utterly joyful. And that's kind of how that happened. And now I'm really glad I did, because I've met all these lovely people here this weekend, and I hear the most incredible stories about the ways people react to these characters. And I promise you guys, until I was lucky enough to start doing conventions, I truly, and I can speak on behalf of Billy and Maurice, and Tress MacNeille and Nancy Cartwright and all the people who do this gig, we did not know the extent to which people connect with these characters. I mean, with their souls. I've heard stories from soldiers who have come to me in tears saying, you know, I spent 2 years, 3 years in Afghanistan, and every time I'd come back from patrol, my go-to thing was Pinky in the Brain and a couple of beers. And you will never know what that meant to me. Or, you know, my parents went through a really acrimonious divorce, but as long as I had Ninja Turtles, I was good. Or Animaniacs got me through my father's death because we connected with that show. Who knew? You knew, and we didn't. And it's